CEDAW, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. And so that's what we mean when we say CEDAW, the acronym. It was first approved by the UN General Assembly back in 1979. President Carter signed it on behalf of the US in 1980, but we have not ratified the treaty. And I'll talk some more about that later on. But what I always like to do, and coming from a law school and talking about treaties and what have you, I just want to quickly go through some of the provisions of CEDAW so that you can see how broad the reach of CEDAW is and how it impacts on probably what each and every one of you here in the room is doing in your daily lives, and to see how you can relate to that. First of all, it is the broadest definition of discrimination that we can probably find in a treaty. It says discrimination against women as any distinction, exclusion, or restriction made on the basis of sex which has the effect or purpose of impairing or nullifying the recognition, enjoyment, or exercise by women, irrespective of marital status, on the basis of equality between men and women, of human rights or fundamental freedom in the public, in the political, economic, social, cultural, civil, or any other field. It's very broad, very broad. And it's one of the international human rights treaties that not only talks about civil and political rights, but economic, social, and cultural rights, and that's really important. Article 2 talks about the whole principle of equality. Article 3 requires action in all of those fields: political, economic, social, economic, and cultural. Article 4 provides for what we here in the U.S. would know about affirmative action. And it says that states parties to the treaty can take measures, including setting up quotas, which some countries have done. Article 5 recognizes the role of culture. Article 6 requires suppression of trafficking. Article 7 mandates equality or non-discrimination in political public life. Then skipping along Article 9, that women have equal rights to nationality and that of their children. Article 10 deals with education. Article 11 deals with employment. Article 12 requires states to eliminate discrimination in the field of health care, including access to family planning if necessary. It doesn't say anything about abortion, but it says access to family planning. We can talk about that later on. And then they talk about issues of family benefits. They talk about rural women. And then they talk about equality before the law between men and women. And Article 16 talks about ensuring equality in marriage and family relations. And that's a very important clause. So very quickly going through this, and this has been called the International Bill of Human Rights for Women, women and girls, when I say that, okay. So that's the background to it. In addition to the specific articles in the treaty, by the processes in international human rights law or international law, you don't get to say everything in the treaty. Things evolve. Things happen. So over the years, there have been a lot of discussions, just like we're doing here today, about violence against women. So there have been general recommendations to this treaty, and these come from the 23 experts on this particular committee from around the world, and it shows their evolving work. So these general recommendations deal with violence against women, because they realized that they didn't say a lot about that in the initial treaty. So over the years, this just shows the evolution of that, and as we speak, they're preparing to have a session in Geneva where they will talk about, the working group will talk about violence against women. In terms of ratifications, 189. 6 countries have it, including Iran, Sudan, Somalia, Tonga, Palau, and the U.S. And that's a story in itself. Barbara Boxer calls that ridiculous, embarrassing, and inexplicable. You know Barbara Boxer. Anyway, some success stories. Countries have changed their constitutions to comply with provisions of CEDAW. The countries have used, people in those various countries have used the treaty and the treaty obligations of their countries to win court cases. The countries have reduced violence against women and girls based on the work implementing the treaty. We can talk about other examples. To just show you the relationship between the local and the international, and Emily, you were part of that delegation. Because the U.S. has not ratified the treaty, it does not get to participate fully in the committee, the CEDAW committee, that implements the provisions of the treaty. But last November 14th, Emily was part of a WIN delegation, and Sun Yun Sun also, and they actually went to the meeting of the CEDAW committee. And this was the first U.S. CEDAW report since the committee and the treaty was established, because we haven't ratified it, no U.S. representative, but it was civil society that was asked to come to that meeting and present the work that we had been doing here in the U.S. And the reception of the delegation was fabulous, and we can say that some said that they wanted to do that back in their home countries, and they're asking my questions. Yeah, it was very, we were very happy about that.